I can at once see from your faces that that's a much harder question. And the reason is, when we're good at something, we tend to enjoy it. When we enjoy it, we take ownership of the learning. And when we take ownership of the learning, we become unaware of the learning because it becomes fun. So, dig into your past.
Are you recording?
And write down in a few words what the circumstances were that led you to develop that skill that you write down as answer to my first question. Now, I've done this all over the world. This is my first time on the island of Borneo, and it's very interesting. I think I should really publish a paper about these results because I've done this, all over different continents, South America, Africa, from South Africa to Egypt, where I was a few months ago, Saudi Arabia, all over Asia. And there are no differences in the responses you get to this second question. If we had used the handheld devices, I would have had to type it in and we would have created a word cloud. Can't do that. Originally, I had hoped to have clickers here, but we didn't succeed in getting those too. So we're going to use a very low-tech method. I'm going to show you 5 choices. And at the count of 3, I want you to put your hand on your chest, pay careful attention, because if you don't do it well, I'm going to have you stand up and do it in front of everybody, okay? So you're going to put your hand on your chest, and the number of fingers has to correspond to your choice. So 1, 2, 3. No, there's no choice yet. You can wait, okay, until I project them. Okay? So at the count of 3, we all do that at the same time. Okay, so this is my low-tech clicker, which is good because I don't want to emphasize the technology. There's so much talk about technology and education, and you know what? Almost 100% of it is simply old wine into new bottles. It's simply a new way of doing old stuff, and people expect all kinds of miracles, and at the end it has done absolutely nothing for education. We don't need smart boards. We need smart students. Anyway, so here are the 5 choices. I want you to pick whichever is closest to what you wrote down. I learned it by trial and error, by trying it out, making mistakes, learning from my mistakes. I learned it by listening to lectures. The word listening is not on the screen there, but it's very important, right? Because giving lectures is different from listening to lectures, as we all know. So what I mean by is listening to lectures. I became good at it by practicing. I became good at it by apprenticeship, by tagging along with somebody else who's good at it, and then looking over her shoulder and learning from her. And then there's a number of other categories that people report, like friends and family and so on. Pick the one that comes the closest to what you wrote down, and at the count of 3, you put your hand on your chest showing 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5. You understand? And if you don't put your hand on your chest, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to put this microphone right in front of your face, and you have to stand up and tell everybody in the room what your choice is, okay? Ready? Everybody understand the instructions? Good. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. On your chest. Good. Higher up, so not behind you. Okay, good. Why don't you raise it so everybody can see your choice? Go ahead, raise it, and look around. Look around. There's something rather interesting. Look around. First of all, the most popular choice is 3, practicing, and this is the same all over the world. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Okay, you've just had some Tai Chi. I'm going to give you some more exercise here. Right? Notice that 3 is the most popular choice, which is true everywhere around the world. We learn by practicing. But look around. What do you see that's interesting too among the distribution around you? Let's see if anybody notices. What? You gotta yell because I don't hear very well here. Something is missing. There's one choice that is Very, very, very rare. 2, exactly, lectures. And how do we teach? This is how we teach. Can I see the people at 2? Raise your hand again. Oh, I pity you. I'm so sorry. Well, probably less than 1% here. But how do we teach? All around the globe, we teach this way. This is a picture of me teaching my pre-med course a long, long, long time ago. This picture was taken BC, before computers. See, I'm using an overhead projector. By the way, this architecture dates back to when and where? What? Yell it out, because I can't hear otherwise. Well, not Aristotle personally, but yes, the ancient Greek. The ancient Greek. Did they, by the way, develop this space as a learning space? No. They developed this as a performance space. I'm sure that when you walked into this auditorium and you sat down in those seats, which are all facing forward, you weren't expect to interact. You automatically take on a passive role. You expect to observe. The Greek developed this to focus the attention of many on a few performers. They used it for theater, music, but not for teaching and learning. In fact, if you look at an illustration of the School of Athens, you see something very different. You see people walking around in pairs, talking. Not at all like this. But somewhere in the Middle Ages, we derailed, and we started using the performance space as a learning space. And in fact, frankly, I think many faculty, many professors love performing, which is why we're so comfortable in this role. So here's what I'm going to do this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about education. What do we mean by education? Let's see if we can get an answer to that question that was asked yesterday. And then I'll talk about peer instruction, an approach to teaching that I developed when I finally discovered that my students weren't learning at all. And lastly, given that this is a conference about education, I thought I'd better end with a test. So you better pay attention, okay? This is your last chance to leave if you're worried about this test. Okay, so let's start by talking about education. And let's ask ourselves the following question. What is it that happens in a lecture? Take that picture of me teaching my course. I want you to tell me in 1 or 2 words, or describe, rather than tell, the activity that is taking place on the screen behind me. And ideally, I'd like to hear a verb, but the 2 verbs I do not want to hear are teaching and learning. And remember, yell it out really loud. So go ahead. I'm going to come right there so I can hear you and repeat the words I hear. Yes, go ahead, learn it out. Listening, telling, instruction, which would be the same as teaching. Observing, listening, again. Say thinking. Wow, you're very generous. I hope my students are actually thinking, I'm not so sure. Go ahead. Experimenting. Taking notes, very good. Sleeping? Did I hear somebody say sleeping? These are my students. But now that you mentioned sleeping, I can't resist quoting something that I once read. Some people talk in their sleep. Lecturers talk while other people are sleeping. No. These are my students, they're not sleeping. Listen, a lot of the things that we heard pertained only to the students. Listening, taking notes, thinking. But I'm there too. Is there a way that we can talk about the whole process? So go ahead, try some more. Transmitting. Transmitting what? whatever I want to, but I mean, can we sort of give a description of what I'm trying to transmit? Knowledge, I guess some people say knowledge here, but what is knowledge? Frankly, I don't know how to transmit knowledge. Knowledge is something that needs to be constructed in the brain of the learner. So I don't, you must have heard my talk before. Information, exactly, that's what I'm after. Lectures focus on the transmitting of information. And you know what? My students had actually rubbed that in my face very early in my teaching career. And I had ignored it. You see, when I started teaching, as I told you a moment ago, I didn't ask myself, how am I going to teach? Put yourself in my shoes. What do you think was the question that did come up in my mind? What? Exactly, or more precisely, what book? So I went to a colleague of mine who had taught the course before, and then I asked him that question. He said, oh, in this course, we have used Halliday and Resnick. I'm sure many of you know that book has been a classic for I don't know how many years. Now, I was told that students in the US, I was educated in Europe, and in Europe, you know, we would never buy a textbook for an introductory course. I mean, why spend the $150 or whatever dollars it is to buy a book that the instructor is teaching from? Anyway, so when I was told in the US, that in the US the students buy the textbook. So 2 weeks before the class started, I went to the bookstore and I said, make sure that you order 150 copies of Halliday and Resnick so that they're there in time for the September 15th start of the semester. And as I walked back to my office, I thought, wait a minute, if the students have the book and I have the same book, that's what do I do in class? So on the way back to my office, I stopped at my colleague's office and I asked him that question. And he said, don't worry, there are lots of different physics textbooks. And he showed me a shelf full of books. And I started to look, and very quickly, I identified the perfect textbook. It was perfect for two reasons. One, it was different from Halliday and Resnick, so it was at least not regurgitating the same information, but that was not the important reason. The important reason was the book was out of print.